We're going to look at BBC Question Time, which, as we both know, has been mainlining racism and presence since, well, I don't know when. It's been around for a few decades. Last night, our very own Ash Sarkar appeared on BBC Question Time. We're going to go watch her in action, responding to what I thought was quite a unthoughtful question.
On this matter of health tourism, what has been found is that migrants to this country bring more and contribute more in tax than they take out of the system. No, it's true. It's a fact.
Rubbish.
It's a fact. Sorry,
Rubbish.
facts don't care about your feelings. It's a fact. One is that migrants, particularly when they're young, they're working age, they're contributing to the private sector through the form of paying rent, through paying for their cost of living in this country, and they're also contributing to this country through taxes. When it comes to Britain, we have an ageing population, so you've got more and more people who will age out of the workforce, and at the moment, with our birth rates, we don't have enough people aging into the workforce to be able to support the kind of social care and pensions needs which are only going to grow. But one thing that I really want to say, because this is really important to me, is I don't want to just make the case for migration on GDP in the labour force. I want to make the human case for it. My grandmother came to this country, she was 17, and it was to fill a gap in the labour market which still exists, which was for social care. Under these rules, she wouldn't have been able to come to this country. She wouldn't have been able to meet my grandfather, fall in love, have children, have some grandchildren. I know not many of you will agree that all of her grandchildren were a good idea, but, you know, we exist. And that's a human story that's got worth, and it's got a value which cannot be measured merely in GDP.
So that was Ash Sarkar on BBC Question Time. You might be thinking, what question precipitated that? I think we're going to get that up in a second, Fox. Is that possible? So we're going to go to the question that prodded that response from Ash.
Interesting what you're saying here. 68 million people now live in England, going up, UN estimates. At what stage does the panel and people think this country has had enough? That we should close the borders, completely close the borders, because it's got to the stage now is there's no education, schooling, infrastructure. It's enough. We are sinking. Surely someone's got to see common sense and say enough is enough. You've got people flooding into this country that cannot speak English. I've come from London. In the National Health Service, everything's written in different languages. How much is that costing? How much is it costing for the interpreters? Sorry, madam, how much is it costing for the interpreters? I was in hospital last week. The interpreter never turned up for the people who couldn't speak English. She was paid. They all had to go on, and all the radiologists stood around doing nothing. What sort of country is allowing this? What sort of country is allowing this tourism to come in? You arrive in a plane, you get free service, you can have your babies, you can just carry on having it all for free. Why haven't they got points set up in the hospitals and you pay like you do in every other country you go to? You wouldn't turn up in America and be allowed to go for free.
Wow. Not a nice lady.
Not a nice lady. And also, I mean, Ash gave a very good answer because you said that what you've said is factually incorrect. I mean, I know you're going to bring up that her facts don't care about your feelings was a fabulous appropriation, I suppose you could say, of a line that Ben Shapiro always uses to try and, I suppose, what he thinks is triggering the left, because he's saying, the facts are on my side. All you do is shut people down because it upsets you, so you do trigger warnings, etc. What Ash is doing very effectively there is saying, you know, what you're saying is just wrong. This isn't about opinions. And of course, it's not about opinions that migration damages our NHS. Anyone, I mean, she obviously didn't mention in her sort of potentially made up anecdote that most people working in hospitals are either migrants or ethnic minorities. So they're, you know, the descendants of migrants. So this idea, and I think she's actually out of step with the majority of the public, because I think most people recognise actually that immigration is a good thing for our health service. Anyone that's been to a hospital will understand that. And I suppose you're going to make it clear that she's not just an ordinary member of the public as well.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, it's not just the NHS, it's also, Ash said, which is a fact, we tend to import younger working age immigrants and we tend to export older non-working age immigrants. We tend to, I mean, that could obviously change, but right now, the idea that we're bringing in people who are a net drain on public welfare provision is obviously absurd. It is obviously absurd, like you say. I think most people know that. However, this lady wasn't just some random bellicose person who is representative of an unfortunately sometimes racist British public. She may be that, but more than that, she's actually a Tommy Robinson supporter. Would you believe it? We'll get a picture up of her. We've got a few pictures actually of this lady. That's her there with Paul Mason. That's a Stop Brexit demo. That is the real coalition of chaos. Racist BBC Question Time lady with Paul Mason.
You should clarify that her and Paul Mason were not on the same demo. She's on a counter protest against Paul Mason's
it's a Stop
demo, right?
Brexit demo. Yeah. Oh, that's very true. No, she wasn't trying to stop Brexit. There you go. And there's a free Tommy poster. So this lady is a right-wing nut job, and yet she's found her way onto BBC Question Time. And it's important to say, this isn't the first time. There's a great article from Open Democracy. We probably can't get it up. That's fine. I've burdened Fox with far too many links today. It's on Open Democracy. It's from 2016, and it's a piece called "Is BBC Question Time's audience producer really a fascist?" Really gets the point. Maybe somebody can share it in the comments. We've got some quotes from that. We can get these up. Have we got those quote cards? Yeah. And this is from 2016, remember. And the lady it refers to, as far as we know, still works BBC Question Time. A freak Twitter storm engulfed the audience producer of Question Time last week. Alison Fuller Pedley, who picks the BBC panel show's audience, received a hail of online attacks and condemnations. By Tuesday, she had removed her Facebook profile and deleted both Twitter accounts. Critics had good grounds for rage. In September, Pedley had invited the Boston Lincolnshire EDL to apply for the show's audience, drawing complaints from anti-racist campaigners and local MP Matt Warman. The backbencher was told the show approached the EDL repeatedly, but contacted neither the Conservatives nor any other local group. In a letter to the Director General, he accused the BBC of misrepresenting Boston, quote, fanning the flames division nationwide and giving the impression that abhorrent views are widespread enough to be acceptable. On Monday, things kicked off again. People discovered Pedley had shared posts by far-right group Britain First, tweeted supporting Vote Leave, and joined Facebook group, quote, the British Patriot Front. On Thursday, Bella Caledonia, that's a Scottish blog, discovered a UKIP councillor claimed to know Pedley and said he persuaded her to bring Question Time to his town. The same day, campaigner Jack Monroe cancelled her licence fee in disgust, branding Pedley a blatant neo-Nazi supporter. So, Michael, what's your view on this? I mean, we don't know for sure if she's still working at BBC Question Time. It appears that she is. If she is, what does this say about the show?
I mean, it's appalling, frankly. I mean, if she's sharing far-right things, and I mean, messaging the EDL to say, do any of your members want to come, is just, I mean, that has to be a sackable offence. Because, I mean, the BBC, you do think there is a bit of a cordon sanitaire, at least, around people who are in organised fascist groups. So to invite them to come into the audience, and the whole point is, if you've invited someone from an organised political movement, then people should know that's where they've come from. Whereas if they're posing as, you know, an ordinary member, because the whole point is, and why, you know, it's often ideologically useful for people on the left or the right, or you know, whatever. You do get Labour members who have, you know, much shared questions, and it's because you there are posing as an ordinary representative of the people, and so when that gets shared, it seems like that's what ordinary people think. But what she is obviously giving there is an incredibly far-right talking point that doesn't remotely reflect ordinary people. And then, I mean, there was a lot of debate afterwards about the sharing of that clip. And whilst I feel like sharing, it was lucky, right, that Ash was on
they just shared the question.
Yeah, it was lucky that Ash was on the panel when she gave a very good answer, because I do think that people viewing the question... She was
the only one, by the way, to actually respond in the way that she did.
Yeah. So watching that question and that answer, I think, you know, is useful for people to watch. But what the BBC did is they clipped the question separately, shared the question. So many people, and I think it's got 2.7 million views. Obviously, a lot of them hate sharing it, but you know, some people will have done the opposite of what is the opposite of hate sharing? Love sharing. I don't know, sort of boosting. People who boost it, who sort of agree with the opinions, they would have watched that without any riposte. And that getting shared from a BBC account will lead some people to believe that, yeah, this is how migration impacts the NHS. And I do think a disclaimer needs to be put on that, right? That what you're hearing is a propaganda piece from a far-right activist.
That's right. There's no context, and yeah, it seems absolutely inappropriate for them to share that without the answer. And do you think it's just coincidental that this lady has contacted Alison Pedley, has contacted the EDL, but didn't contact the Tories, as far as we know, didn't contact Labour? I mean, one argument would be, and you see this a lot, I saw Claire Fox make it on Twitter, well, look, these opinions exist in society, so they might as well be reflected in the audience at large. And to be fair to BBC Question Time, one of its strengths is that it confronts journalists in London, politicians. They're up at the sharp end with parts of the country, with people who hold certain opinions that they just normally don't have to face down. I mean, where do you sit on that? Should somebody like this lady be platformed on the BBC? If you say something like that which is inaccurate, should that then be shared at all? What's your views there when it comes to the free speech element?
Well, I think there's a difference, isn't there, between contacting an EDL group and inviting them to apply and having, I suppose, and inviting the general public to apply, and one of the people who gets through happens to be a far-right activist. I mean, I have mixed feelings about whether or not it's useful to have those questions posed so that politicians can answer them. And as I say, I think Ash answered it very well. And you do have the concern that if they screen out far-right people, are they also going to screen out far-left people, et cetera, et cetera. But I suppose the point is, if you were going to platform that kind of view, I suppose, is to take on a big responsibility, which is to say, if we are going to platform this frankly wrong and also incredibly dangerous view, we will be prepared to provide a proper riposte to it. And as you say, if Ash Sarkar wasn't on that stage, that could quite well have been not properly responded to. I don't get the impression that Fiona Bruce is there ready to say, actually, that's not true.
Except in the instances where actually she's factually incorrect.
Yeah, when she's telling that Diane Abbott, actually you're way behind in the polls, when actually the polls show that the two parties were neck and neck. I mean, I presume, have Question Time been explicitly asked whether this Alison Fuller...
Well, I think she still comes up in the credits. She still comes up in the credits,
Wow.
But I mean, is she still playing such a central role? We don't know, but it's not good. I mean, there's two elements there, like you say. I think it's absolutely inexcusable to be publishing the question in isolation. I think it's also inexcusable to have this lady there. I mean, let's say she said, "Oh, well, everybody knows that black people have lower IQ than white people. Why don't we just accept that as a society as the question?" I mean, would the BBC publish that? What kind of question would they not publish? That's the question. Or, oh, child pedophilia. I think that's acceptable. What do you think? I mean, would they publish that? I mean, there's clearly a line that's got to be drawn here. But it seems to me, whenever it's the talking points to the far right, actually that line is quite generous.